Welcome my dear students. This is going to be the third lecture of week 8. In the last lecture, we tried to understand that how this electronic waste is going to impact particularly on environment as well as health. And in that particular category, we try to find out that yes, water within that particular environment component, whether it is related to all those natural resources, how it is going to be impacted, as well as there are possibilities of those very rare elements or rare earth elements. So, exhaustion of those rare earth elements is also a possibility there, because in most of the cases, particularly in electronic waste, which is reach all those rare earth elements. So, definitely that we have seen that how this exhaustion at some point of time, because these are all finite resources. So, definitely one day if things are getting exhausted, so we do not have any other resources particularly with reference to that. And then at the same time we have also seen that the health issues, how these electronic wastes are impacting on human health, and those diversified sectors with reference to this particular health impairments which is being impacted through this particular electronic waste if it is not properly managed or if it is not properly handled. In today's class, we are just likely to extend that particular portion. We will be talking about electronic waste management. We will be talking about those basic issues which is going to encompass the managerial part, and the objectivity is all same. The objectivity is we wanted to get rid of all those impairments in your ecosystem or your environment, and at the same time we wanted to recover some of those useful materials, particularly from that waste. So, these are our major objectivity, particularly whenever we go ahead with this waste management, means this electronic waste management. So, in today's class we are going to talk about electronic waste management in general. The key issues, there are multiple issues are there, many of those issues have already been deliberated, and what is the global perspective on electronic waste management, and what are those solutions if there any things are available for us, and where basically how we are progressing particularly with reference to India, how and whether it is the other part, mostly the developed world or the developing world or the underdeveloped world, how they are progressing with these sort of available resources or infrastructure for processing this waste. So, once we started mentioning about this particular electronic waste, there are few SDGs or sustainable development goal always we wanted to address, and these are all intricately related. If we look at in the larger context, most of those SDGs are linked. If it is not properly managed, if these wastes are not being managed properly or rationally, or if it is informal sort of processing is being done, definitely there will be consequences, ramifications, and that is going to impact this sustainable development goal. So, whether it is with reference to good health, because we mentioned this particular component that whether it is your good health, whether it is your clean water and sanitation, whether it is your life below your water, the responsible consumption and production, the SDG 12, and sustainable cities and communities, decent work and your economic growth, because these are all intricately related, particularly with reference to generation of these electronic waste, right. These are all development oriented, because once you have a greater infrastructure, definitely you are likely to produce that much of waste, and at the same time if it is going to be processed informally, definitely it is going to impact on your health, on your clean water and sanitation, on your, as I said, those particular your natural resources, soil, water, and finally your plant and animal. And definitely there is another very important part of it is because once we are trying to address these issues of electronic waste, we need to be very responsibly, we have to address these with a collective responsibility of your consumption and production, how much it is need to be done, or whether we need to go ahead with more even if it is not needed. So this particular approach, whenever we try to address this, it is always rely on this reduce, reuse and recycle concept. So this 3R approach is always going to be very, very important. So when I am talking about reduce, definitely in the last slide you have seen that particularly with reference to that context of the consumption, the responsible consumption and use. So definitely it will be there. So that means you are avoid use of extra gadget, use of multifunctional devices rather than taking so many numbers. So if it is in one particular instrument or gadget, if it is capable to provide all those functions, we can always do that. Design of devices with less toxic materials. So that smarter devices, this is a very difficult task, but yes, there are multiple innovations are happening in this area as well. So this will come under reduce, right? And the next is your reuse. In reuse, basically one can go ahead with your repair and reuse of your old devices, that is always possible, replacement of some of the components or reusing it. Use of damaged devices in other format, that can also be done. This is another way of doing it. So through these we can always go ahead with that sort of reuse concept. And recycle, there the problem is used to give rise, because when I am talking about this e-waste management, this is going to encompass everything, encompassing all these acts, particularly with reference to your recycling. And if it is recycling, the first thing is it has to be the generation of whatever is being generated in the form of electronic waste, and then one need to make the inventory that what is those nature, and based on the composition, definitely one can make those sorts of segregations as well, because some of them will contain some of those heavy metals, maybe microplastic, so whatever, maybe metalloids, and then those sort of segregation is very important once things are generated. And then dismantle and shredding, this is also very important in this particular process of recycling. And once you are dismantling, then also you have to make those sort of segregation once it is dismantled, right, and then it has to be shredded. Then sorting of different parts, that's what I was mentioning, the segregation part. And this segregation is very, very important. You need some sort of many a time some sort of technical knowledge, or many a time those informal workers, if they have been given a initial training, they can do that, and supply to form new products. So these will come under the recycling strategy. So once we talk about this particular 3R approach, definitely we understand that this reduce, reuse and recycle is going to be very, very important. And if we wanted to make an effective e-waste management, and which several times I mentioned, which is very critical for your environment, for your health. So definitely the first thing already we discussed, but I am just going to make it further elaborated, all those components. So collection and recycling. Proper recycling infrastructure, that means establishing your facilities which is equipped to handle your electronic waste and recover those valuable materials safely and efficiently. This is very important. That means we need to have that sort of infrastructure as well for doing that sort of processing work. Then collection drives, initiating programs where communities can dispose, because many a time this sort of activities is being done in public places, in private places also, and even in community level, or even at the domestic level, one can go ahead with this always. And that is always going to, otherwise if it is being dumped locally, then also it can create some sort of problem. Then extended producer responsibility, this is coming up. This becomes a very important component in this strategy, that manufacturer accountability, that means that requires electronic producers to take responsibility for the life cycle of their products, and including disposal and recycling. Once we are taking any product from them, definitely it is coming to their responsibility to recycle as well as processing or disposing. It is coming under that extended producer responsibility. Product take back programs, this is coming up these days, and this is very frequently happening, particularly with reference to your electronic waste. This is being encouraged also at levels. So, encouraging companies to offer incentives for consumer returning your old electronics, maybe at lower price, but definitely it is going to give some sort of appreciation for both, means the companies as well as the stakeholders who is using that particular machine or gadgets or instruments. Then consumer awareness, this is sensitization is very, very important. Whenever we go for any sort of drive, particularly any waste management drive, definitely this sensitization is very key. This becomes the precursor. Once you wanted to work on a particular very rigid plan, this becomes a precursor. So, that means what is done over there, informing individuals about that environmental dangers, that what may be those impacts. So, this can be put in those public and private places, so as to make sure that everybody knows what is going to be the impact. And repair over replace, this is also we need to give that emphasis on this particular component, rather it is throwing it out, but always we can repair it and we can reuse it, highlighting the benefits of repairing devices instead of discarding them. And once you go ahead with this, definitely you will be able to make sure that you are in the correct loop, means you are complying your circular economy, which is a desired sort of state of art right now. That means design for sustainability, creating electronics that are easier to repair, upgrade and recycle. So, this must be those particular an ingredient component for one talk about those electronic waste, reuse and refurbish, promoting second hand markets and refurbishing outdated those devices. This is very common in developed world, and this is also coming up in developing world as well, means promoting this sort of second hand markets. So, definitely it is always you can make that particular part reassured that yes, it is not being dumped or it is creating any sort of hassles. Legislation and policy, we will be talking about this particular component in more detail. Particularly this is very, very important once you are handling this waste, and you need to have a very vigilant and those sort of enforcement agencies, very vibrant agencies should be there. That means you are enforcing laws to ban illegal dumping and informal recycling practices. This is must, and for that it's not going to be done individually. It has to be done in a holistic way. That means you need collaborations, and collaboration within the group of countries, or maybe in the larger context the other countries as well from Asia, Africa and United States. So, they have to be work hand in hand. That means collaborating internationally to address this cross border US trade, which is a very, very difficult thing, which is challenging us. Trade and establish standardized practices. Innovation and in recycling technologies, I mentioned that there are few innovations are happening, either of those smart materials which is not going to make that sort of impairment or damage to your ecosystem or your environment, or else you develop some sort of technologies which can efficiently extract your valuable materials while jeopardizing or minimizing your minimum environmental impacts that can be always there. So, and in this context definitely, as I said, it is not somebody any individual can do it. Definitely, everybody has to work together, whether you talk about the government. So, the government and various stakeholders are working toward improving these waste management practices. Definitely, they are going to go ahead with your promotion of recycling, creating awareness, that sensitization, promoting your sustainable waste management practices, right. And once you do it, as I said, that it has to be done holistic manner, involving everybody. So, where you need involvement of your government, involvement of your manufacturer and a consumer. And once we can put them in a single platform or bring them in a single platform, definitely we will be able to manage this particular electronic waste properly. That means that particular part of, whether you talk about recycling, repairing, refurbishing, your remanufacturing, reducing and reusing. So, in every context, the idea is we wanted to bring out the maximum out of that particular waste material. That means that is very important component one. And the second component, we wanted to get rid of that any sort of impairment which is happening to your ecosystem, right. So, this has to be done, and here the effort should be from every side, it is not from a single side. So, recycling these electronic waste, there are multiple options which are available. One of the option is, once you accumulated those waste, definitely you have to make a separation or segregation. So, that is mechanically can be done, and now there are machines or sensor based machines are there, which is automated one, or manually one can do it. And once your components, different components is being separated, the next part is trying to recover those particular useful material from this. So, for that you may have the first method may be pyrometallurgical process, very common, incineration of the matrix and smelting of the target metals. This is very common and most prevalent. The second one is your hydrometallurgical process. This is basically dissolution and recovery of the target metals, right. And the third one is your biometallurgical process. This is coming up, this is not, this is in an infancy stage. This metal leaching in presence of bacteria and fungi, because there are multiple ethical issues are coming up. So, definitely introducing this sort of organisms, particularly which are designed organisms rather to say. So, this is going to be always some issues are there, but still it is coming up. So, in all the process, the idea is whatever from that particular segregated waste, we wanted to recover some of your useful materials in the form of metals, mostly metals, right. And now, as I said, you may have some other options as well, like your hybrid technology. Instead of using any one pathway of leaching, we can combine chemical and biological leaching, so that they may work in the form of consortia. There may be leaching by supercritical fluid. Here the metals are leached in presence of supercritical fluid with your hydrogen peroxide and sulfuric acid as co-solvent. But using acid is always going to be, is not that much desired, particularly for whenever you are going to address the issues of waste. And then supergravity separation, metals and alloys of different melting point which can be easily separated by creating supergravity field. The field is created by your centrifugal apparatus. So, this can be done. The other one is electrochemical processes. It is a one-step recovery process of metals. Here the metals are recovered by combining your electrochemical dissolution and deposition. This can be done as well. So, these are other options. So, whether you take those options of metallurgical process of separating, right, or you can take in a consortium mode also, means multiple in a single shot. Once this particular waste is being segregated, separated and then recovered, means useful materials are recovered. So, definitely there are services are available, there are few organizations who actually work on this. So, organization and services that basically specialized in e-waste management. So, there is one organization is EcoWise. So, they basically offers end-to-end e-waste management services, including your IT asset refurbishment, data wiping and recycling. So, they do whole sort of or gamut of work. They operate across mostly, now mostly in India, but also they are working in some of your SAARC countries as well and comply with your e-waste management rules 2016. We will be talking about that particular legal part. So, they take care of that particular legal issues as well. That means complying those regulations is very, very important also whenever one is going ahead for this managing this waste, definitely one need to comply. The second one is ELIMA. This basically provides your comprehensive e-waste management solutions focusing on safe collection, recycling and disposal. So, starting from collection to disposal, everything is being involved. In the previous case, it was a more comprehensive one. There you have seen, starting from your IT asset refurbishment, data wiping. So, things were involved, but here, they emphasize creating a circular economy and resource recovery. They only, concentrated on collecting, recycling and disposing those particular waste material. There is a e-waste mart, which is basically a leader in e-waste management services in India and offering secure data destruction, asset recovery and environmentally friendly disposal. So, they take into account most of the important things, because those particular gadgets, they may contain some very important data as well, right. So, that data, those secure data destruction, particularly whatever waste is being generated in particularly in banking sector, definitely they will have those data. So, they also secure those data destruction, asset recovery and environmental friendly disposal. They also provide hazardous waste solutions as well, hazardous waste related to all those heavy metals and metalloids. They have those sort of comprehensive. That means whether you talk about EcoWise, ELIMA and e-waste mart. So, these organizations are working with a comprehensive solution, okay, particularly in context of managing this electronic waste. So, once these electronic waste management issues we were discussing, there will be some issues as well, means particularly handling this electronic waste, because I said this is after medical waste, this is going to be very, very sensitive one, very, very sensitive one. So, there are few key issues are there. So, what are those key issues? There are issues related to your legislation requirements. That means you need to have that sort of, you need to comply with those sort of requirements, whether it is at the regional level or whether it is at the state level or whether it is at the central level. So, those agencies, whether it is State Pollution Control Board, Central Pollution Control Board, or if you look at the other context, maybe WHO, they have their own specifications. So, you have to comply. So, this is an issue. Once managing this particular waste, one need to be very careful about. There is another issue is environmental issues. We already discussed in detail that environmental issues, definitely if you are not able to manage these waste, particularly after disposing. So, once it is going to be disposed, definitely it is going to create huge amount of menaces, whether it is impacting your human health or whether it is impacting your environment, the other natural resources. So, definitely that has to be taken care with more more authenticity, more rigidity and more that sort of comprehensiveness. And cost and revenues of recycling process. This is also very, very important, particularly because we need to have that sort of infrastructure in place for processing or for extracting those metals or for recovering those metals from those waste. And with reference to this context, as I mentioned that Africa is facing a huge issue. Even in India also, we have few issues, particularly we do not have that much huge infrastructure for converting, but yes, things are coming up, and but it's a challenge which needs to be taken care of. The productivity of disassembling plant. So definitely once you are going to disassemble those particular component from an electronic or electrical gadget, definitely their efficiency is going to be less, because you have all those modern or sophisticated technologies which are already available in the market, but their efficiency is going to be less. So many a time we need to have that sort of compromising sort of nature, otherwise, and we need to take care, and we need to be very user friendly sort of thing with reference to your ecosystem services, providing ecosystem services. Then waste stream volume, definitely as I said that the way this waste is being generated, the growth rate is enormous. So definitely as the technology advances, definitely what was, I mentioned it earlier also, but this is very pertinent to this electronic waste, because what was evident yesterday may not be evident today, and what is evident today may not be evident tomorrow. So every time you are using your this particular material, and we always wanted to have those sort of advanced material, so that we get those advanced solutions many a time, advanced attributes of some of your material. So definitely that is there. So if this has to be managed properly, means electronic waste has to be managed properly, but these are the issues one need to address it properly. So one need to be very careful once there. I mentioned about this particular growing volume of electronic waste. I said those the upgradation, this upgradation cycle is so fast, definitely it is creating that sort of electronic waste continuously. The toxic components I already discussed, and this is going to create those environmental hazards, and with a special reference to your lead, mercury, cadmium and brominated flame retardants and arsenic also. So these are going to, if it is not managed properly, it is ultimately going to enrich any of your natural resources, and if it is going to be enriched, definitely it is going to make that sort of thing. Then you have your health risk, I already mentioned. Resource waste and economic loss, definitely e-waste contains those valuable materials, and if it is there are some materials which are rarely present in your earth crust, so that is also going to be lost. Lack of awareness and regulations, this is also there, that sensitization is needed. And this e-waste dumping in developing countries and particularly less developed world, where it is being dumped intentionally. So that is going to create some sort of more problem, because they don't have infrastructure to handle, and at the same time they are being dumped from those developed world. So this is also making those issues. So if we look at the global perspective on electronic waste management, the developed countries, basically with reference to European Union, they have a very strict e-waste management rules, and under this Waste Electrical Electronic Equipment Directive, and that has to be maintained very rigorously. The United States, they have also their rules, and they have extended producer responsibility laws, and that is very stringent. Japan implements a home appliance recycling law, which mandates this recycling for large appliances. And then if we look at the developed countries, particularly India and China, because of this huge amount of generated waste, so definitely there are few regulations are coming up. Many African and South Asian countries, they struggle, I already said, and there are few international initiatives, whether you talk about those Basel Convention, which basically aims to restrict these transboundary movements. There are few collaborative platforms are there, where international organizations like Global E-Waste Monitor, I have given that particular statistics in the initial class, that provides insights and track progress, encouraging countries to adopt your sustainable practices. The circular economy approach I mentioned many a times, and that is going to be very important, particularly if one need to address this. So for these, definitely there are few solutions. You need to strengthen your e-waste regulations, and across countries we have seen there are few already those regulations are there. Promoting extended producer responsibility, we have seen that USA and Japan is very strict on this, and investing in sustainable recycling technologies, those innovative technologies or innovative products or solutions that will definitely address these particular issues. And encouraging your consumer awareness and participation is also very important. And there are some global cooperation and ethical trade practices that has to be followed. Waste electrical and electronic equipment, particularly with reference to this disassembly planning. So one need to be very careful about this particular, once it is being generated, definitely it has to be those preliminary inspection is needed, identification of those particular hazardous substance, because when I said that during segregation this is done, preparation of this disassembly sequence, and then selecting tools and lines for disassembly, and estimation of the revenues after this disassembly, which is very, very important. That means this waste electrical and electronic equipment disassembly planning is very important and is a very important component in this. Dear students, in this class we have studied those particular waste management initiatives, particularly with reference to electronic waste. What are the possible options? What are those options we have, and how those options we can use at our best so as to minimize those sort of impact on your environment and your health, as well as we can make more or recover more useful material out of these resources. And we have also seen that across the different continents or the globe, the initiatives made by different countries, whether it is developed or developing world. So, and we have seen all that. So thank you very much, and in the next class we are going to see some of those legal provisions. Thank you.